We are back, everybody. Welcome in, Rumbler Nation. So kind of you to join us after this Week 10 excursion in the NFL. It was a lot of interesting football. Some storylines progressed that were already kind of unfolding in front of our eyes. Some new storylines popped up. You know what's going to happen. Me and Ryan are here to go over it all with you. Welcome back.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on our Week 10 recap. We are so happy to have you here with us, and thanks for spending some time with us. Spencer, this was another really good week of football. I felt like there was a little bit of a stretch there where the weeks were kind of like pretty mid as far as the games goes in terms of excitement. But these last 2 weeks, Week 9 and 10, this is just some fantastic football, and I'm very much looking forward to getting to break down some of these games with you. And we've got some fun stuff lined up for all of you today. But Spencer, off rip, we've got Josh Dobbs, not only a maniac on the football field, but also a social media maniac, posting one of the best TikToks I have seen post victory ever. Well, why don't we go ahead and roll what Josh Dobbs uploaded onto TikTok post victory against the Saints.
Let's take a look.
No way. Is he gonna do it? Yes. Can you take me higher to a place where blind men see?
And you know what I love about this, Spencer, is that Josh Dobbs has just got that dog in him. There are some people, like CJ Stroud, right? He says he is a football player. He's not a test taker. Josh Dobbs, he can do it both, and not only that, but he can make you laugh. What can't Josh Dobbs do at this point?
Grow hair.
That is true.
That's about it, though. That's literally it. He is the Pastronaut. He is probably deserves to be ranked as one of the greatest backup quarterbacks of all time. In fact, Ryan, I wanted to mention this. I didn't pull a clip of it, but this is very, very interesting. Did you know, I believe a year or two ago today, the Jaguars' backup quarterbacks were the following. Gardner Minshew.
Okay.
Josh Dobbs.
Okay.
Nick Foles.
Wow.
3 of the greatest backup quarterbacks the game has ever seen, possibly not even backups. They may just be starter-level guys that never really found their foothold anywhere, but just a little interesting tidbit.
That is actually fascinating. Yeah, Gardner Minshew is certainly, I think, the solution moving forward in Indianapolis. Obviously, with Anthony Richardson being out for the season, I think you have to be really happy with rolling Minshew, and then also just a sneaky little Super Bowl MVP in that quarterback room as well. And now we got Josh Dobbs, who might just take the Vikings to the promised land. We'll go over that game a little bit more, but that's actually fascinating. And that was all behind Blake Bortles.
No, that was too long for Blake Bortles.
Okay.
I think technically Nick Foles may have been starting that year because they had paid him.
Yeah, that's right.
And Minshew was the true backup, and Dobbs was just kind of hanging out as the practice squad guy.
Pretty interesting that Nick Foles is actually still a free agent. I mean, I'm certain that there's probably a spot for him on some NFL roster, I would have to imagine, especially with certain teams like the Jets, for example. I can't help but think that maybe Nick Foles would be better than Zach Wilson.
I don't know. Based on that last year with Jacksonville, I'm not holding out a whole lot of hope for Mr. Nick Foles. I mean, I think I'd rather even have Matt Ryan coming back at this point than Nick Foles.
Matty Ice. It's also funny, Spencer. There was like a post-game interview with I can't remember who the player was, but it was in the Vikings locker room.
Oh, apologies.
Oh, that's okay. And somebody was talking about Josh Dobbs, one of his teammates, and they're like, yeah, they did a blood test to see how much veggies there are in your bloodstream, just to see how much veggies he's been eating. Came back 100% ice.
Yeah. I saw another post from Jordan Addison where he was like a 6-rounder for Josh Dobbs, and it was like someone handing someone a laptop for some spaghetti. There's some memers over there in Minnesota, man. Respect
They really
to those
are.
guys.
You have to think that it had to be Captain Kirk over there, just holding it down with the comedy,
Quite possibly.
rocking those chains.
Yeah, I
Kirk.
think they've known their memes since that started, really. I mean, really even since the Stephon Diggs interviews about dating your sister and everything.
Right.
They've always had some funny sound bits. But speaking of memes, Ryan,
Yeah.
let's talk about potentially the biggest meme of the week in the NFL,
Right.
as far as I'm concerned. The Buffalo Bills, and specifically Mr. Ken Dorsey, the offensive coordinator for this squad. He has been relieved of his duties, official, after the absolute dumpster fire of a game that Josh Allen and company put out there against the Denver Broncos, resulting in a devastating loss, honestly, a potentially season jeopardizing loss for the Bills.
Yes.
Thoughts, Ryan?
My initial reaction to this is that it's a bit of an overreaction from the Bills front office. Ken Dorsey actually has a pretty efficient offense. He has an high EPA. They're certainly getting it done through the air. They clearly have an identity as a pass-first team, which if you have Josh Allen, why not? But Spencer, since 2019, Josh Allen has led the league in interceptions. I just feel as though this is maybe some misplaced blame from the Buffalo front office. Certainly one thing that Ken Dorsey was not able to do was not creative and could not find a solution for, although it was better, ironically, this game where he ended up getting fired afterwards, was they could not run the ball. Like, they just refused to run the ball. There was absolutely no creativity. There was nothing there to create wrinkles, to open up space. Just absolutely nothing going on the ground. But again, because they are a pass-first team, right? Like those numbers are inflated, maybe as far as EPA and everything goes. But yeah, my initial reaction to this is that it's a bit of an overreaction. Certainly, you hate to see a team like the Buffalo Bills starting 5-5. We talked a little bit in our breakdown before the season started that I thought this might be the year where their window really begins to close, and I think that personally, in my opinion, the blame I think goes to stand a little bit more with Josh Allen than it does with Ken Dorsey, in my opinion.
Well, I think where I disagree, going back to your point about the run game, because, I mean, I remember in our breakdown series where we were talking about the Bills, I mentioned, right, this supposed rejuvenated run game. You add in Ferguson, the guard. You add in, Damian Harris as a free agent. You're getting second-year James Cook, who you're expecting big things out of. Where we seem to defer, Ryan, is what I was seeing in the Broncos game, that there wasn't a lack of willingness to establish the run and allow opportunities to the run. It's just that, like the kind of the outcomes of this entire year up to this point, their run game has been unsuccessful, even when attempted to be leaned on, right? I mean, James Cook fumbled the ball on the opening snap of this game. He had a near giveaway on the breakaway run where he was basically dribbling the ball like a basketball down the middle of the field, managed to reel it in and run an extra few yards. But, frankly, I don't think they have a ton of faith in their running backs. I mean, we talked about Latavius Murray is the oldest active running back in the entire NFL right now. I think it's a big part of why they go and they sign Leonard Fournette, who has yet to even play a single snap for them either so far. At the end of the day, Ryan, I think Ken Dorsey, this is a deserved firing personally. He failed at what his mission was. The mission coming into this season for the Bills, balance out the offense, put less pressure on Josh Allen to carry the weight of producing all of your yardage, whether it be on the ground or through the air. But in any big moments where they needed yardage or they needed a conversion, they never trusted the run game. And that's because I think categorically Ken Dorsey failed at what he set out to accomplish this year. And then, not to shy away from your point about the interceptions, Ryan, Josh Allen certainly needs to look in the mirror and figure out what's going on. But I do believe, truthfully, that a lot of that pressing that he's doing that's leading to these interceptions is that added pressure put on him.
They can't get the ball on the ground at all.
No, and I mean, you can't rely on the run game to convert. It's all got to be on you, and frankly, you don't really have the weaponry to just be an all-out throw constant type of offense. And the one thing I'd point to, we'll talk a little bit more when we get to the actual game, but the difference between this team and the Chiefs, to me, they both have a relative deficiency of weapons. They only have one proven guy. What is the big difference, Ryan? They have the greatest offensive mind in the NFL, arguably, in Andy Reid, directing the show. When you're led by Sean McDermott, a relatively average defensive coach, Ken Dorsey doesn't seem like an elite offensive mind to me. This is the result you're going to get when you don't have the weapons and talent around Josh Allen to make up for that.
Yeah, certainly. And this has been like an ongoing problem for the Bills for a very, very long time. They just have never been able to get anything going on the ground. And to your point, Spencer, I think a lot of that has to do with scheming. It's just incredibly straightforward. They run almost exclusively out of shotgun in situations where it's maybe 1st and 10 or 2nd and long. And when you can't get anything going on the ground, Josh Allen might be seeing 3rd and longs 14 or 15 times a game, which is crazy. It's just absolutely crazy. It is just a blatant disregard for getting anything going on the run game. And as we know, the NFL is a passing league. It is a league where if you cannot pass the ball effectively, you're not going to win. But that does not mean that you can completely ignore the run game, right? Because this is football 101. You cannot pass the ball. You cannot effectively pass the ball consistently with any sort of result if you have no ground game to speak of whatsoever. I think that was improved on in this game against the Broncos, ironically enough. James Cook had a pretty good game. But yeah, they just have refused to ever put any sort of stock into an elite running back that can go back there and carry the rock 20, 25 times a game and reliably get them 4 or 5 yards of carry and scheme up, guard pulls or duo or power or anything. It is just straight up, straight out of Madden, inside zone every time, and nothing changes. With that being said, Ken Dorsey, if you want to kick Pete Carmichael out the door down there in New Orleans, we would love to have you. I would just like to say.
Yeah, anybody but him, right? I would say, too, I want to amend my prior statement, by the way. I said Ferguson. The guard that I was trying to say was Osiris Torrance, who was the 2nd-round pick, I believe. But that kind of ties into maybe the summation of this, as I didn't even mention the offensive line, which is arguably Ken Dorsey's biggest failure. They added talent into that group. He vouched for Spencer Brown, trying to turn him around this season. I told you the other night watching the game, Spencer Brown has just more of the same, even regressed a bit as well. Just really inept as far as pass protection goes. Pretty average to below average performances in the run game. There's just not enough talent around Josh Allen. I know that's going to piss people off because, he has Stephon Diggs. They just drafted Dalton Kincaid. Yeah, but, Dalton Kincaid's a rookie, and Gabe Davis isn't even a number 2 receiver in this league, if you ask me.
Not only that, but Dalton Kincaid was not drafted to run block, right? Dalton Kincaid is another weapon that they hope to develop through the air. He can run block, but mainly where his talents are sort of like that Kelsey prototype where he's just big, tall frame and he can find soft spots in coverage and he can run routes decently. And he was just another weapon for Josh Allen to throw the ball to. If you're not going to be investing in any sort of linemen in free agency or in the draft that are going to be run block specialists, you need to be able to have something on maybe the end where you can show some creativity and open up some space in the middle of the field where you can get those higher yardage average on your runs. And then then there's not as much weight on Josh Allen facing 3rd and long multiple times a game.
Exactly, Ryan. And then I'm always hesitant when I see the fandom dogpiling begin because it's ridiculous. We started the season with Allen and Burrow firmly in that tier below Mahomes or right there with him, arguably. And if you recall, this early part of the Bengals season, Joe Burrow was struggling, and I didn't hear any whispers about him having fallen out of the elite quarterback tier.
Right.
These guys go through different phases of their careers where they're surrounded with different level of talent throughout their careers. And I'm not trying to give Josh Allen every single excuse because the interceptions have been indefensible in certain instances, but it's worth talking about because at least they made a change. This was a needed change as far as I'm concerned. It's time to move in a different direction. head coach included, hopefully, when the season's over.
100%. We will talk a little bit more about the Bills and Broncos game here in a little bit later on in this episode. But to move on from the Bills offense a little bit, there's some interesting stats here. We'll put up the graphic. Just a insane catch by Courtland Sutton, which I had slandered last episode or the episode previous.
That thought arose in my mind, Ryan.
Courtland Sutton, that is just one of the most insane catches. And even if you notice in this second graphic here, it is almost identical to that Lockett catch that was also insane and also thrown by Russell Wilson. Just very weird how, history doesn't necessarily repeat, but it does rhyme.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, you'll see in the initial graphic, everybody, it's a 3.2% completion probability on that catch, which is good for the most statistically improbable completion of the Next Gen Stats era since they began recording these things. I remember like it was yesterday, that Lockett catch that he made. My jaw was on the floor, obviously. And I remember seeing that statistic when they initially, they were making a big deal about that Lockett catch. It was like, this is statistically the most improbable completion we've ever seen. So to see it broken so quickly and by none other than the same quarterback that threw the last one, I mean,
right.
We may be back in business here with Russell Wilson. I don't want to go too far with this because I want to talk much more about it in the breakdown, but just thought it was an interesting tidbit and a little teaser for us as we get into the clips and the breakdown of the Broncos game.
Yeah, 100%. We have one other piece of news here. The New Orleans Saints have signed Jason Pierre-Paul to their roster. Spencer, I cannot tell you how happy this makes me, because this is the thing. We were talking a little bit earlier about Chris Jones when he was holding out for the first game of the season. And we were talking a little bit about this with Frank Clark, too, when he was being released from Denver, ended up going back to Seattle, is that there are just some guys that in the playoffs are just different. And Jason Pierre-Paul, to me, is one of those guys. When they were making those runs in the deep playoffs with Brady, it was just constant. Jason Pierre-Paul was an absolute problem. Mm-hmm. And I think it really teases sort of like this idea that the Saints have that NFC South is wide open, and I personally believe that it is the strongest roster in the division, and the division is certainly still wide open. I still have no doubt in my mind that Derek Carr and Dennis Allen and Pete Carmichael could find a way to keep the Saints out of the playoffs. However, if they do end up making the playoffs, Jason Pierre-Paul as a pass rusher alongside Cam Jordan and a first-round pick, Brian Brzee, who's having a nice start to his young career, this just makes me incredibly happy to see. He can be an absolute game wrecker. We'll see how quickly he can get integrated and get going down there in New Orleans, but it's something that I was very happy to see, especially with the departure of some key pieces on the defensive line, like Sheldon Rankins, for example, who had a really nice game this week, and with Trey Hendrickson, who was the NFL sack leader the year that he was due for a contract renewal, and they decided to let him walk, go on there to Cincinnati. So adding some pass rush depth, some veteran pass rush depth, makes me very happy to see.
Yeah. Well, I'm first to admit when I was wrong in our prior breakdown series generally. And, one of the big things I think I got wrong, frankly, was the Saints front seven, specifically their front line, their defensive line. The kid, Granderson, you know him?
Insane. Yes.
He has really come alive. He was really unexpected for me. I love the way that kid plays. He reminds me so much of Rasheem Green that the Seahawks used to have on the roster. Just a big mother effer that is like, he's stout in the run game, got a little bit more bend than you'd expect in the pass rush. He's a good player, man. And like you said, Brezee's come along. I don't know so much about the other rookie. I think he's been more of kind of a rotational, pretty sparing snaps played, which probably sets the stage for this. They're not really getting as much as they would have liked out of Isaiah Foskey out of Notre Dame. So, yeah, like you said, a veteran presence to kind of shore it all together. Again, Pete Warner and Demario freaking Davis are having excellent seasons once again. Definitely an elite linebacking core right there. Yeah, I'm getting more and more in on the Saints defense as we go along here. However, we'll get into that. The Marshawn Lattimore injury does give me some pause, just a tad.
Yeah, it's interesting what you were saying about Granderson because the comp that I have to him is actually within the same division. He reminds me very much of like Vita Vea, where if he gets a clean look or a one-on-one look and he can beat you, he is bendy and he's good in space and he can chew up the run, but he's also just a go, and we've said this before, he's a go fuck the play up kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
And that we just love to see how he's been progressing. The Saints defense is, I believe, the only thing that has been keeping them in first place. But there are some updates that are not good. We'll get more into that.
Well, Granderson's interesting too, Ryan. If I'm not mistaken, he can play inside. They bump him out to the edge sometimes over the tackle. I mean, I love the versatility that guy possesses. In fact, you want to know my comp, Ryan? I see some Trey Hendrickson in his game. Frankly, I don't think he's got that kind of ceiling, but a lot of athletic potential there in that kid. So.
Certainly.